What is up, guys? Welcome back. We are on episode 25 of the Reptile Hangouts podcast. Can't believe we are a quarter century now. We are a quarter of the way to 100 episodes.
Hey, we're there, man.
Yeah, man, we're getting there. It's been fun. It's been good. But yeah, thanks for coming back. And we got a real good one lined up for you this week. But before we do that, since CJ's not here to start, CJ Charles, I don't know. I interchange because he's my brother and I grew up calling him CJ. So you'll have to forgive me for that. Charles, I think is what he prefers. Anyway, since he's not here, we'll jump right into the USARK talk. So as always, guys, we like to plug USARK, United States Association of Reptile Keepers. They're fighting for our rights, man, to be able to keep the animals that we love. And that right is constantly under attack. You may or may not know it, but there are, animal rights groups and just, I say it as nicely as possible, but ignorant people who don't understand, and not in the, I say that in the least negative way possible, who are constantly trying to keep us from being able to do this stuff. And groups like USARK are out there fighting for it. So check out the link in our description to usark.org. I say if you want to support them, do it by becoming a member. If you're a reptile keeper, or if you just had no reptile keepers, you're interested in keeping reptiles, become a member for $5 a month. Doesn't cost very much. You hardly even notice it amongst all your other subscriptions, I'm sure. Also, check out their YouTube channel. They have a dedicated YouTube channel now. It's on USARK. You can search it through or you can get the link in our description, or you can search it on YouTube, USARK channel. It'll pop right up. Definitely follow them on there. They need our support there as well. Everywhere where the numbers are high, it looks like, there's a lot of keepers out there who care about being able to keep doing this stuff. So do that. Other than that, what's been going on with you this week, Gabe?
Well, again, same as last week with the move. Today's been a little bit of a hectic day, being that we give the keys back officially on Sunday, and yesterday was my last day at my old job and everything, and had to move my toolboxes and stuff, and in the process of it, my vehicle overheated today and everything because the toolbox is so heavy, but it's
oh my goodness.
But it is. We're doing the best we can.
Gotcha.
Trying to have a good day.
Yeah. How about the reptiles? Everybody set up at the new house, doing fine?
Yeah, everything's set up. It's been pretty hectic just because. Being that I'm working over here, we've been kind of just going back and forth. Like we'll spend a couple days here, then we'll go back there, check everything, spend one day there, clean everything, make sure everything's good, and then leave again for a couple of days. So,
Gotcha.
But officially, like I said, yesterday was my last day at my new job, at my old job. So we'll be off to our new house, and that'll be it.
Very good, man.
You guys will see me and see my new setup at the other.
Sweet. We can't wait. What's up, Carrie?
Hey,
are you in the? I say, are you in just the same room as Gabe right now?
What's funny?
In the other room.
Oh snap! It's hard for me to see the comments. But what do you got going on, bro?
Yeah, man, same stuff, different week, really. Working on the old thesis quite a bit this week. Spent since about 9 o'clock, from about 9 to 5:30 this afternoon doing. So I worked 9 to 5 on my thesis today. And I think so my advisor is taking a group of students on a tropical ecology trip to Bonaire. They're leaving tomorrow. 2 weeks they're going to be gone. And I can, with about 95% confidence, say that by the time he gets back, I should have something to show him for my third and final chapter. Yeah, getting that close. So that's good. There's a couple of different graduation dates that are allowed in the summer. So hopefully I can get everything done by one of those dates, and then I can just be done with this crap and move on with my life. But the reptile stuff, man, everything's same, just taking care of everything. Obviously got some cool eggs cooking, got crested gecko, gargoyle, Central American banded gecko. Hoping to get another clutch of those here soon. Should have another clutch of gargoyle eggs either tonight or tomorrow night. She's digging. She dug a lot last night, but she didn't lay. So definitely good stuff, man.
Heck yeah. Awesome.
That's pretty much it, man. Not a whole lot else going on. Hopefully the weather's getting pretty nice here. So if you're a fan of the channel for other things besides this podcast, I will maybe be shooting to record stuff for a herping video on Monday, possibly.
Heck yeah. Well, we
look forward to a new video there. But anyway, without further ado, I told you we got a really cool one lined up for you tonight, and we do. We have Mr. Phillip Lietz of Arids Only with us tonight. Let me go ahead and bring him in. What is up?
Yo. Hey, what's up, fellas?
How's it going?
Good. I hear somebody's cat out there.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's mine. Sorry.
No, it's awesome. Hey, I love cats. It's hilarious.
Yeah, they're cool, man. I mean, of the non-scaly pets that we have in the house, they're probably my second favorite. Yeah, I love the
second
dogs
favorite
too,
behind the dog or what?
Behind the reptiles.
Oh,
yeah,
behind
the dogs. Probably
second favorite behind the reptiles. I see.
Yeah, so I got my reptiles. The cats are cool. Like I can get on board with them. They seem to like me. We get along.
Yeah.
And the dogs are just kind of a pain in my butt most of the time. And then my wife has a bird who hates my guts. So.
Well, birds are too smart. They're assholes.
Yeah. Oh, come on, cat. Please don't do this. It's my turn tonight. It's gonna be like this. Gosh.
That's pretty good.
All right. Hopefully she'll stop. But anyway, so thanks so much for being here with us, Phillip. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it.
Yeah. So obviously you're a business. I guess we call it a business. Obviously, you're breeding and selling stuff. It's called Arids Only, and you are big into desert species.
Yeah.
So
right.
what all are you into nowadays?
So the primary thing is Uromastyx, and it work with quite a few species of them. A little fewer in terms of total number of species over the last 2 years, but more in terms of total number of animals. Primarily because I'm kind of trying to narrow my focus a little bit and give a little more attention to a smaller subset of species. So I have those. I'm really into Xenogama taylori as well. So I have, You like those guys?
Only because I saw you on another podcast talking about them. I didn't even know they existed until 2 weeks ago. Now I'm kind of obsessed.
Oh, they're so cool. Yeah. So those are great. I have those. I have a couple of species. I have two pairs of the dwarf spiny tail iguanas, the Defensor and Alfred Schmidti. Awesome. And I have some Nephrus amii and some chuckwallas and some Cuban anoles, which aren't the desert variety, of course.
I was going to ask because I was on yours prowling the Instagram, and I was like, these don't fit in.
No, they sure don't. That's why my friend Camille, when I post those, he puts Dewey only he'll hashtag Dewey only. It's pretty good. Gotta love that. And I occasionally I'll get random side projects that are really fun that either stick around or maybe get them going a few times and turns out they're not a good fit here or for whatever reason. And so sometimes I'll change out those. But yeah, the two biggest ones are the Euros and the Xenogama. Those are the bulk of my focus and the bulk of my energy these days.
Gotcha. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, we sort of moved away after several episodes from asking the how'd you get into reptiles thing. So I'll skip that. You've been on other podcasts. I'm sure that story's been shared. So let's talk about how you found your niche in reptiles after you were already into it.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So, I bred bearded dragons for years, kind of like everybody, I worked with everything. I had bearded dragons and crested geckos and leopard geckos and stuff. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 16, 17 years old, something like that. And I got, I don't remember if it was Christmas money or birthday money or I don't know. I just ended up with some money from my parents. And I was like, lizard time for sure. Like this is because what else are you going to do with that money? And I went to the local reptile shop and they had a Molly Uromastyx. And one of the guys who was working there at the time, who became one of my friends, kind of sold me on the thing. These are so cool. And they just eat vegetables and the setup's like a dragon and blah, blah, blah. And I bought the animal and I brought it home and I ended up doing some research afterwards, and just was like, oh, Uromastyx are the coolest lizards on the planet. Okay. And so I had them on and off for probably the next 5 to 10-ish years. And there was whether it was either moving for school or moving for work, or I ended up living overseas for a little while, so I would have them, and then I wouldn't be able to keep them for one reason or another. And then came back to the States after living overseas, and I picked up a pair of Uromastyx thomasi, and just had never bred anything yet, and had seen that a handful had come into the country, and figured it would be worth getting my hands on them. And I bought a pair of them, and a couple of years later they bred, because they were about a year old when I bought them, and a couple of years later they bred, and that was the first species I hatched. And after that, I was like, oh, everybody says that thomasi is like it's one of the rare, really hard species to breed. It must be, you must have done something right, or whatever. I don't know. And so then I got some ornates, and I got those to breed, and eventually just realized that I kind of had something about them. I kind of had a little bit of a knack, or I was getting good results, or whatever you want to call it, and just decided to hit it hard, and got a bunch more. And then it got a little bit even crazier when I met up with Ty Park down in Florida at one point, and actually, I'm sorry, he came out here for a soccer game he was doing, and I kind of sent him a message and was like, hey, I'd love to ask you about this, breeding reptiles for a business and how you do it and stuff like that. And then after he was really, really generous with his time, and talked with me about it, and kind of convinced me to just go all in, a little bit. He was like, look, you should go big on this. And I was like, all right, yeah, okay. And I just I went home and planned out how to expand the cages and make like 1 million more of them, and started buying up all the Euros I could get my hands on. And yeah. So that's how it's just been a kind of a never-ending spiral since then.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah.
See, your power bill's got to be through the roof.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the power bill is a perennial problem.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I mean, I too did bearded dragons for a while, and I didn't even have that many. I had I don't know, like 6 or 7 adults, something like that, and even that was enough to add hundreds of dollars to my power bill.
Yeah,
Crazy.
And they don't even need it as hot as Euros do, and it's a lot. it's a lot.
Whew.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
So I'm curious, as a former Euro owner a couple of times myself, both of Molly Uromastyx, because that's, we used to get them at the pet store. Me and Gabe worked at a pet store for a really long time, kind of a small
me too.
pop place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't think we were doing anything right most of the time when it comes to the Uromastyx. I know that we did have some increase in success after I suggested that we offer like small bird seed, at least as like something on the side for them, including in their vegetables. Seemed like we had better success after that, but it still wasn't hot enough, I'm sure.
Okay.
There's no way we were keeping it hot enough.
Okay.
I mean, do you find, as someone who's sort of got this dialed in, that across the hobby, that they're one of the more like improperly cared for lizards, like in the general populace of reptile keeping, as opposed to people who are just like, this is my thing?
That's a great question. I think maybe yes and no. It's the thing is with desert reptiles in particular, they're so resilient and so hardy and tough that I think people can get away with keeping them in ways that are suboptimal for a long time. And I think that it's not just Euros, right? That's also bearded dragons and any other desert dwelling animal. People, they kind of give them this like one slot of here, they're all like this. And then, it's just put a bunch of rocks on sand with a 1,000 watt heat light and it'll be fine. Right. And I think as time goes on, we all learn a little bit more about some of the nuances around keeping whatever it is that we want to keep. And
Right.
so the further I've delved into this, the more I would say, yes, they are very much not well cared for on average. That's something that I'm working really, really hard towards trying to change and remedy. But it's a mixture of factors, and some of them are across genres. So, one example would be, I think people end up with the proper temperature gradients, right? So they might have a cage where they can stick a temp gun at 5 different points throughout the cage and get, 80, 85 over here, 95 to 100 over here. And then there's a little spot over here that hits 135. We're good. We're golden. That's it. That's all I need. And that's not accurate at all. You need a very, very wide spread of basking zone. You need a space that's as large as that animal is long, that hits that whole area hits the desired temperature of 125 approximately, give or take 5 degrees.
I've had to with, as my Asian water monitor has gotten bigger.
Yeah,
it's not easy to make a basking zone.
Yeah,
that can stay the temperature you need it, man.
Yeah, right. It's terribly difficult. So there's the basking problem, and then there's the sort of like the UV access problem, right? People will just put like a screw-in fixture compact fluorescent into a weird sideways facing fixture, and there's a little bit that goes downwards, but it's not nearly enough, and the brightness isn't quite enough, and all this other stuff. But then with Uromastyx, you have more species specific stuff. So I think the two things that, and I've kind of gone on about this before, but it never hurts to repeat. The two things that I think people do immediately incorrectly with Uromastyx is, the first is they cohab them. They do communal housing. And I think they need to be housed solo, especially for beginners. As you get more and more experienced, you can experiment with ways of communally housing them in pairs and trying to make it work. But it's challenging, and you need lots of space and lots of basking areas and lots of hides. And usually, even with all of that, you're going to need a separate cage to split them every once in a while, because the reality is that they just don't want to be around each other all the time.
So in general, males and females, it's a no-no.
I mean, even it's yeah, I would say so. Yes. And the problem is,
obviously,
what people are gonna do is they're gonna send me or you or whoever messages and say, "See, here's my animals together, and they're fine." And then what I'll say,
or they're right on top of each other, so they love each other.
And yeah, exactly. And what I'll say is, unfortunately, you don't have enough information to know whether or not they're fine.
Yep.
And it sounds kind of like a dick move, but it's serious. Anybody who keeps any animal at all, it doesn't have to be a reptile, will tell you that there are small, very interesting and important subtleties that you learn the more time you spend with those animals. And, it's very, very hard to convey that to someone who just wants I want to Google Uromastyx care and get the 5 bullet points I need. And the reality is that that's not how it goes. So then the second thing, so even though, well, actually, let me just say one more thing, which is, even though it may be the case that there are people, like a couple of good friends of mine, Camille Hammers out in the Netherlands, my good friend Nick Alexander here in the States, these guys have worked out a system of communally housing their Euros. But I can tell you with certainty that both of them have interference strategies, and they're running mitigation all the time to try to make sure that animals don't hurt one another, that they're not getting too stressed out, that they're not, biting the shit out of each other's sides, or, damaging each other's limbs or scarring up each other's backs. And they have to split a lot. They have to rearrange caging a lot. There's a lot that you have to do to make it work well over the long term. And then you add in a whole nother can of worms when you talk about nesting and egg laying. So there's that. And then the second thing that people do is they overdo dry foods, seeds, and processed food. So that can mean lentils. That can mean like bird seeds and finch mixtures. And then that can also mean the this stuff right here, Reptile Juvie iguana pellets, right? People or any kind of tortoise food and all this other stuff. People, this stuff isn't bad in and of itself or sort of in one instance, but people leave whole food bowls of that shit in the cage all day long.
Right.
And then they wonder, you know, and they think it's going to be just fine. And it's like, no, that's not what they're supposed to eat. And so that causes a lot of downstream problems, problems that don't, you know, they can present themselves very early with animals that are not very healthy. So whether that's a wild caught animal or something that's been emaciated or improperly cared for a little while, that stuff will show itself right away because it's so stressful in the system. But if you have a very, very healthy, otherwise vigorous young animal that's been relatively well cared for, and then you start giving it a whole bowl full of dry food and all this shit, it may not show the problems for 2 or 3 years, but I assure you those problems will come up. So it's those two things that I would harp on. And then also, yes, I agree with you that generally they're not cared for as well.
I just wonder because
sorry.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Curious about in euros, you know, what kind of problem can occur from just too much dry?
Yeah.
Action or like?
Right. Great question. So, it's a multitude of issues. So Uromastyx, just like lots of other reptiles, live in harmony with some level of gut bacteria and gut flora that can get in and out of balance at any given point in time, right? And sometimes as keepers, especially if you're just a sort of a hobbyist keeper, you don't necessarily recognize when something might be going weird internally. So if you have an animal that develops an internal parasite problem or something along those lines, and you're continually pounding it with this food that taxes its system over and over, right? Because those dry foods, those seeds, they're harder to process. Maybe some of them, like the dried processed foods, will absorb a lot of water out of the digestive tract. All this stuff can cause problems. And yeah, that can slow down gut motility and cause digestive issues. I don't think impaction is usually the big worry, even though it is on the list of worries when you're doing too much. But it's more, in my experience, it's more metabolic issues. So maybe, you know, there might be some people who argue that there might not be a big difference between the metabolism and what's going on in the gut. They're pretty deeply intertwined. But a lot of those, so, you know, I was talking about heating before. Most people put like a little spotlight that gets us a bulb, or I mean a ring about this big of the 125 degree heat that they need, whereas it needs to be a whole huge space, right? So what you're dealing with is an animal that's regularly under metabolized, is not able to be up at its peak temperature, peak physicality all the time. And then you're also stacking on this really, really hard to process food, you know? And then you add on top of that the fact that people overdo it. Bee pollen is one of those things too. Bee pollen is another little treat that people will constantly tout as this great treat for your euros. And while I think it's great in very small, very, very small quantities, there's not a shred of data or information out there about how that all of those foods affect Uromastyx in particular, no less any other reptile. So I always steer people away. And then you get the added problem of the fact that the food that we give them, the vegetables and the greens, people will get carried away adding hard vegetables like carrots and squash and all these, which is great. It's good to give them that stuff. You know, you should give it to them once in a while, but 90 to 95% of their diet should just be plants, just greens, like whether it's
green.
Yeah, whether it's, and you know, there's, you know, and I could make some arguments about exactly how much of that should be sopping wet salad and how much of it should be like dry greens. But dry plants are not the same thing as dry processed foods or dry seeds. It's a very different structural thing, you know? So,
the moisture level is probably.
Yeah, that's right. It's totally different. And there's fiber content and the animals in the wild would be, depending on the season, are going to be picking up dry leaves and dry bits and dry grasses and hays all the time. So try to get people to think about them more like a tortoise without a shell in some regard, because you're just going to get better results if you steer towards what people do well for tortoises.
without a shell.
Yeah.
That's what they always reminded me of, honestly, kind of, the tortoise without a shell. They have a they have a very turtle-esque head.
Yeah, and they share a lot of habitat with tortoises of various kinds, because they come from the Mideast and North Africa over into India and Pakistan. There's all kinds of tortoises that live out in that, you know what I mean? And the way I like to think about them is like a mixture between like a monitor lizard and a tortoise. So, or maybe actually the best comparison that I like is the American chuckwalla. A Uromastyx is a chuckwalla. It's just you find them out in the deserts of Israel, right? But it's a chuckwalla.
Chuckwalla with a spiky tail,
yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, they're great.
Well, yeah, that was a great question, Gabe, and it sort of you sort of self-answered what was going to be my next one. Was like, was I even right years ago to be like, let's stick a bowl of birdseed in there?
It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
Right.
It's not like. So some of the birdseed stuff was kind of pioneered by some of the really, really early Uromastyx keepers like Douglas Dix and Lindsay Pike and Audrey van der Linden and some of these folks. And it makes sense because the Uromastyx they have teeth, but they have really more of like a beak. Their jaw turns into like a beak, and it's very good at cracking stuff open. So it's obvious that some kind of seed or pod or whatever, like thick, hard grasses are a part of their diet in some way.
They've evolved in some way to deal with that.
Yeah. And they know what they're doing. You put seeds on the ground and they go after them and they'll eat them.
Yeah.
And that's not the problem. The problem is that people go way overboard with it.
Yeah.
Like
maybe a couple times a month, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll take like seeds or I don't really feed lentils hardly ever. Every once in a while, like once or twice a year. You know what I mean? Like I'll just be like, screw it. They'll probably love it. And I'll go pick up some finch bird seed or some lentils or something, and I'll go scatter it around all the cages. But that's the last time. They'll get it once or twice in a year, maybe,
Right.
And it's just fun for them. It's just throwing in a little bit of mixture. Or if, the other thing I do a lot is wild foods. So I'll do, when it's warm here, I'm in Colorado. So right now we're getting the first dandelions of the year. And I'll go out and I'll pick like 1 million dandelions and just throw them into the cage. Like 1 million of them. And they'll eat that stuff over the course of days, and they'll just mow it all down. And, that's all they need. They don't need any more. And they are masterful energy users. Like the little bit that you give, like the desert reptile is the master of the very small, right? Like of the small amounts. So, you give them a little bit of water, a little bit of flowers, a little bit of greens, and they will take it and run a mile. They really, so the other, I was mentioning before about like the sopping wet pile of greens, and people will feed, like I've had people tell me that they feed their Euro like 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that at all. Like it's just like, I don't need to eat 3 or 4 times a day. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Not
good
really,
with 2,
no.
Maybe 3 at best. And so and again, this isn't just about Uromastyx. This is everything, whether we're talking about a bearded dragon, a Xenogama, an iguana, a Euro, a chameleon. Generally speaking, we're talking about improper heat and light gradients, right? We're talking about probably a little bit under metabolized and underexposed to the right amount of and the right brightness of light. And we're talking about a diet that is not only mismatched against their wild diet, but also is just hitting them at a velocity that's like more than they'd ever get ever in the wild, and it makes sense. People are used to dogs and cats. You feed them twice a day. You make sure don't ever let them go hungry because it's cruel, right? Like you shouldn't do that. But these aren't the same animals, just a totally different creature. I've been out into the here into this American Southwest. You go out at like peak summer, like when it's 1 million fucking degrees out in Arizona, there is not a flower or leaf to be found. And the lizards don't give a shit. They're like, it's fine. I'm just going to go into the ground. I'm going to go into a crevice and I'm going to hang out. As soon as it rains, whatever, cools off a little bit, they'll come out and they'll look around. And your Euros, the same thing. I haven't been I haven't mentioned this to a lot of different people yet because I like to not put out too many details about what I'm doing until I've tested it for a little while, because I don't like to give people erroneous information or something that hasn't worked for me.
Yeah.
You know. So one of the kind of the methods that I've been using here is I will do it on a 3-day schedule, right? So Monday they get nothing. Tuesday they get some kind of dry leafy something. So I get this it's bagged. It's like tea leaf stuff from tortoisesupply.com. It's a dry blend of dry greens and stuff like dandelion and herb and lavender. It's all just dry plants, right? And I made them customize it for me. You can get it on their site. It's called Herbal Hay Euro Mix, as opposed to the tortoise mix, because I had them pull a couple of things out of it for the Euros. And I'll just sprinkle a little bit of that, or a little bit of like ground up grassland tortoise chow or whatever, and I'll sprinkle that into their bowl, and they'll get that on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, they'll get like 1 or 2 full strips of romaine lettuce or green leaf lettuce, something that's low nutrient density but high water content. And that's it. That's all they'll get. And most of the Euros will just trim down that greens down into a stem. And some of them will eat the stem too and rip off little bits of the stem, which is mostly water, you know?
Sure.
And so that part, and then keeping that pattern going, just 3-day cycle. And it's worked wonders here. Like I've been doing that particular method for about 3 years now. And everybody has great body weight. There's no obese reptiles, nothing that's having a hard time laying eggs, nothing that's having a hard time breeding. They have solid, like mostly dry pellets of poo with a little bit of liquid, but not crazy, just like you'd see it something in the wild. And they have great energy levels and great food response. You know, I never throw food into the cage and they're just like, you know, they're like, I don't want it. They polish it off. They'll put it away.
Run over there.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's really cool.
Most people are used to having overabundance of everything, you know. So whether it be, you know, a drink or anything, so we put those same level of care into our, whether it's a bird or fish or whatever, man. Everybody just seems to really like to feed their stuff.
Right. Well, this is it's another form of anthropomorphization, right? So, you know, we put ourselves in that position. We say, what would I want? And it's like, yeah, but I didn't evolve to be a crevice dwelling lizard in the middle of like a rocky hellscape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's difficult to put yourself in that mindset. You know, it's the same thing with their behavior. You know, Uromastyx are naturally very skittish, and it's normal. Like they are a juicy desert steak for a bird, for a snake, for a rodent, for humans, because they are eaten by people too, right? I
believe it. Yeah,
it's called Dab, DHAB, and it's Dab lizards. I've heard of that. Exactly. Yes, it's great, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's eat it up, and But they're prey for everything. So it makes sense that in that setting, it would make sense for them to be skittish. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't tame down and learn to trust you. Of course they can. But people want an instant, like, I want to be friendly now, right now. And it's like, no. They might be so friendly here because they hatch here. I'm the first thing they see when they pop out of that egg, other than one of their siblings. And so they know they're from the jump. They're scared when they hatch. But then by the end of the first week, they're like, oh, yeah, that dude brings lettuce. He's kind of cool, you know? And
that's the big in the sky that throws food down.
Yes, yeah. So they'll like crawl all over my hands. They don't even blink when you pick them up. They're like a floppy ragdoll cat. But then you ship them across the country to a new home. All those instincts come roaring back, and it's like, oh shit, I need to be aware of everything. And it takes them a little more time to chill and remember, oh yeah, this is just a different food monkey, right? Like that's what Mike Stefani talks about him as he's like, I'm food monkey, and
that's awesome.
And so it can take him a little while, but it's the same thing with their salad. It's like, well, but he's hungry. And it's like, well, of course he's hungry. In the wild, it would make sense for him to eat every fucking time he found food, right?
No way.
Yeah. It would be stupid of him to not, the Euro to not eat that food most of the time. So it's like, you kind of have to balance out where, and try to pay attention to where your assumptions about what they may or may not want are interfering with what may be best for the animal. Kind of like with us, right? Yeah. Like I do it too, man. Like I'm going to go home when we're done with this. On my way, I'm at my shop still. On my way home, I'm going to go to Wendy's and I'm going to eat too much food and too much crap. And I'm going to do it. It's fine. Exactly. Like I'm going to do it.
There's water in this cup, to be fair. Yes. But there was not water in the rest of the food. It was a cheeseburger.
Right. Yes. And you got
to give them props on the deli cup.
Oh yeah, digging it, man. Yeah, that's a good way to get that water in for sure.
Well, and I go extra mile. So this is a deli cup that once held pho, right? So
awesome. Yeah, we love pho. That's good shit.
My fiance and I will eat like pho or curry or whatever, and they send us these delis, and I'm like, you save those delis. Yeah. Like I'm gonna use.
Yeah, you need them.
You need them.
There's always a use for good deli cups. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's right.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, man, yeah, that's awesome, dude. You just gave us like a huge plethora of information in such a short amount of time. That's so cool. No, that's awesome, dude. We love it. We love it. I love learning about this stuff because Uromastyxes have always been a favorite of mine. Just like I wanted to have one. I got one. I worked at a different pet store than the one me and Gabe worked at together. It was my first job, and I picked up one there. And that one did well for me. I don't remember why I got rid of it, but I did. It was doing okay. Super skittish. It wouldn't eat unless I was out of the room. So I'd have to feed everything else, put some food down, and then leave for a while.
Yeah.
But it did fine. And then I had another one, and I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at, and what I'm curious about, other than the whole are they cared for properly overall thing, is how much of these guys are coming in as imports still these days. Are a lot?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's really sporadic, and it's kind of like a feast or famine kind of situation. So what you might notice is right now, so this is what are we, end of April 2022? Right now, there's a huge influx of wild-caught Uromastyx ornata. And it's funny because they didn't come in at all for years before, for several years. And the importation is really sporadic. It could shut down at any time because most of the places where Uromastyx come from are conflict zones. So, whether it's Yemen or Somalia or Israel or Egypt, these, the only places that they can get out safely is places they usually come out of Ethiopia, Israel. Sometimes they'll come out of Morocco, when you get Moroccans and stuff. But that's another example, Moroccan Uromastyx, they used to be imported every year, and I haven't seen Moroccans in 5 years or something, 4 years. They haven't been. Nobody's bothered, right? And all of a sudden,
interesting.
And you mix that with the fact that they are hard to care for, and most people don't stick with them, right? So what you get is just this precipitous drop of. In terms of population numbers and stable animals. And so, you could go overnight. The most commonly imported one is the Saharan Uromastyx J. And those are the ones that are either yellow or orange. And there's a few that are like that, but they're the most common ones. They call them
see a lot of those at our local expos. I figure they're probably mostly wild caught.
Yeah, they're all wild caught. Yeah. There's it's literally less than a dozen people breeding any species of Uromastyx in the United States. And the vast majority of those people, we're talking 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair tops, right? I can only think of 5 people off the top of my head breeding more than 3 pairs of any species at any given point in time. So,
and how many pairs are you breeding?
Oh, I got a lot, man. Yeah. It depends on
more than the average.
More than the average, yeah. But the smallest number of so other than the Egyptians, I only have 1 pair of Egyptians because they're huge, dude. I can't do too. You can't do too many of those because they're way too big. But other than that, the smallest number I have of any given pair is 4. So any given species rather is 4. So like Saharans, I've got four pairs. Yemen Ensis, I have 4 pairs. Princeps, I have 4 pairs. Thomas, I've got 4 pairs. Well, more than 4 of each of those, but it's 4 males anyway of each of those, and lots of other females. And so, but total is like I got 150 or something. But there's a lot right now because there's babies. You know what I mean? Like permanent resident breeders, it's like 70. Somewhere in the 75 range.
It's a smaller number than we're used to hearing on this show, but for what you deal with, I think it's a big number. I think it's a huge number. Yeah.
And so it's growing right now. So I'm trying every year. I got to keep a little more and a little more and a little more, and try to accumulate because I want to get to the point where nobody, like, unless I die, right? Like, unless something happens to me, I'm going to make sure that these animals are around and available. Now, obviously, to get them truly established, we've got to have more than just me. There's got to be more people breeding them. And I'm happy to say that there are more people breeding them in the United States. However, what I'm noticing now is people are kind of focusing in on their own little niches. So like my friend Nick Alexander is breeding like a shit ton of Philbii, Uromastyx ornata Philbii. And then I know my friend Tina and her husband Paul, they've been breeding Egyptians and some Mollies, and they have some ornates in Philbii too, but it's I think theirs is still growing. They're doing a good job too, but they're breeding stuff too. And then but other than, but they all have their own little, like Flava fasciata. My friend Mike Rodriguez in California, he likes Flava fasciata, the banded Euros, and I bred all of them. So I bred all the species available in the United States except for Microlepis, but I'm also narrowing my focus. So my primary focus for now is the ornata, nigroventris, which is the Moroccan, and then Yemenensis, Thomasii, and Princeps. Those are my primary focuses. Even though I have Saharan, and I got a couple other odds and ends. Those are the ones that I'm really thinking that I'm really driving a lot of energy into because I think that they are the most interesting ones for my money. I think they're the most compelling. And I think that those species, specifically ornata and nigroventris, have the most staying power in the United States. And by staying power, I'm talking about like if they ever were to blow up and become a big popular, like a very, very like, I don't ever want to see them get to like the level of bearded dragon or leopard gecko, but getting up towards that range where we see them more often, they're going to have to be, we got to have enough of them here to generate a sustainable population for genetic diversity purposes, right? They have to be interesting enough and compelling enough for people to work with them long term and want to keep them and want to breed them and want to have them, right? And they have to be tough enough to kind of deal with it, right? And so, some of these animals like Thomasii, I've been breeding Thomasii for 10. This is my like 11th. If I got eggs in the incubator, they hatch. This is like the 11th year breeding them in a row, and I could safely say that Thomasii are a little bit derpier and a little bit there's something about captivity. They're not quite as tough, and they're great animals. And believe me, I'm busting my ass to make sure every Thomasii I have and every Thomasii I sell is like on point. But I've just had enough of them, and I've seen enough of them come from other people to know that they just don't take the inadequacies of captivity as well as other species do, right? So you have animals like nigroventris and ornata, which in my opinion are just a little bit more tolerant of beginner error than the other species, just a little bit. So like with Moroccans, they take a little bit cooler temperatures, a little bit better. They're a little tougher, a little hardier. They get a little bit bigger. Both male and females are vibrantly colored and beautiful. They can take big heat extremes, big dry extremes. They can take a little bit of humidity. There's a lot that they can handle. So it makes it something easier for your first time keeper. And then they can adjust as necessary if they don't get the right information right away. The animal's not going to crash or freak out on you if it's not perfect. But so I'm trying to make some specific calls about which ones I keep, because I'm thinking like 30 years. Right now, I'm trying to think 30 years out, like what's going to be good in 30 years. And some of these other species like Princeps and Thomasi, stuff that I keep and breed, Philbii, Yemenensis, it's still really, really up in the air as to exactly how long their lifespan can be in captivity because of the very, very small founding population that came into the United States of those species.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've heard you say before on some other shows that you'd like to think that at some point that certain Uromastyx species will become common enough that you'll be able to go to the pet store and there might even be some sort of a kit that you could get your hands on to start with that might actually have the right stuff in it. To do it, because we all know that the kits are a little bit hit or miss sometimes depending on what you're going with. In my work with crested geckos, a crested gecko kit's pretty decent as long as you're not going to use the food that comes in it. You can use some other food. You'll probably be okay because they can handle such a wide range of temperatures and things. You don't really have to to smoke them out. They don't like it hot.
Totally. Yep.
But well, that would be really cool. That'd be something I wouldn't mind seeing. Is a lot more Euros and a lot more popular Euros, that people are like, this is my, as serious as people get about their bearded dragons, it would be nice to see more of the just everyday keepers being that serious about some sort of a Uromastyx. That would be really cool. And I could see ornates being a big choice just because of the color. They're crazy.
I think I try to remain pretty open-minded to this, but for my money, the ornates clear winner. It's so obvious, right? The males look like a damn panther chameleon that lives on the ground in the desert. They're just so freaking beautiful. They're just
to see an ornate the size of like an Egyptian.
That would be it would be cool. It would be really cool. But I think that the ornate's the clear winner, but I am trying to leave room for you never know what the future is going to bring, right? Like I've said before on other shows that I think herpeticulture is kind of in the middle of a really big sea change. Like, don't get me wrong. I haven't been in the game. I'm 35, right? So I've only been in the game for, seriously for like 20 years, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Same with me. And I feel like I don't know anything.
And I don't either. So I'm not trying to say, but I've paid attention and I've read up on herpeticultural history and I'm learning more all the time. And I think that herpeticulture is moving towards something that resembles like a little bit more of an artisan model, something that looks a little bit more like koi or freshwater, saltwater fish or,
poison dart frogs.
Yeah, right. Or dart frogs. Yeah. Something where like,
agree.
There's there's always going to be the stuff that people are interested on a popular level, and that's fine. Like that's great. I love ball pythons and I love bearded dragons and I love leopard geckos. I really do. Like I constantly toy around with the idea of stacking up on some of them just because they're so cool. They're so beautiful, right? But I think even with Uromastyx, even if one takes off, I think there's going to be room for all of them. Any of them that are here and well cared for and well produced, like people put effort into breeding them responsibly. I think there's going to be room for all of them, because people have preferences, right? Some people love Ornata, but some people, like the first 10 years I was into Uromastyx, I very much preferred the Egyptians. Call me crazy. I was like, those ornates, who cares? Like they're just, they come out of the box colorful. Who cares? Like I just love the elephant gray, the regal beastliness of an Egyptian. I just love that.
See, it's
like huge. Yeah.
I like the size. I like bigger animals, like I got tegus.
Yep.
And I got Asian water monitors. I got I just like stuff that's bigger. So I've had the pleasure of meeting one Egyptian, and for me, like that's badass, man.
Yeah.
Like if I would ever have one, it would be that.
I don't blame you at all. And I've got my big adult pair here, Boulder and Pork Chop, and Pork Chop's the male, and boy, he's a big bucko. You know,
No.
he's a badass. But I tell you, I'm very happy that he's not a croc monitor. I can tell you that much. You know, like because I'd lose a hand. He gets a hold of me every once in a while. You know, he's a fucking Uromastyx.
I know you don't think about getting bit by like a Uromastyx a lot of times. Like, I think I have been bit like one time, but it was so weird to me that it happened at all. I was just like I never considered it as a possibility. Like I get bit like daily working at the pet store by various things, and then I stick my hand in a Euro enclosure. Yeah,
it hurts like hell.
I liken it to like being bit like by a turtle, which is like
that's right.
All of the reptiles that I could work with, it's the one that I want to get bit by the least. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I'll take
very
a
much so.
Bite. I'll take a gecko bite. I've been bit by 5-6 foot green iguanas on my thumb and other fingers. Yeah. I don't want to get bit by a turtle, like at all.
No, and no, I'm the same way. And it's like a Uromastyx. As I said, their beak is kind of meant for cracking stuff open, right? So they get a hold of your finger. He's bitten my finger a couple of times, and when he does, he bites. And he just holds, and he does this thing where he stares at me and just
gets tighter,
a little tighter, and he's just like, "I can see you, motherfucker! I'm gonna kill you one day." And he just hates me, and he just bites down, and then he lets go, and he's like, "You're cool today. It's fine, because he just thinks every time I'm coming in there, I'm coming for his food or for his women, and I'm like, dude, I'm not here for either one. I'm here to bring you the food.
I'm the food monkey. I bring it.
Yeah. But I would say too that more on that is I really think that there's a lot of room for a lot of different Euros. And so again, even if we're in ornates, I can see being the thing that eventually everybody's going to want one. They're just if you haven't heard about them, when you do,
all you have to do is see a picture and that's it. You're done. Yeah.
They're gorgeous. And the thing about Euros is they're like the environmentally friendly reptile, man. They only eat vegetables at best, like dry hay and grass and shit. I mean, it's just very easy diet, right? Very low impact. They only need a little bit of heat. They don't need a misting system. They don't need a filter. They don't need live food. They don't need a complicated diet. They don't need, they're very, very simple. They can eat herbs and weeds you grow in your garden. You know what I mean? Like they eat dandelions. Who doesn't want to use for dandelions, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so they're super simple. They just take a little bit of like tweaking and adjustment and a little bit of early investment. And once you get there, you're home free, and they're going to live for 30 to 55 years. Like, what more do you want?
Yeah, they're like tortoise light, really. I mean, they almost are like tortoises.
And they're with like a bearded dragon. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You got something, Gabe?
Probably argue they might be easier than a tortoise.
Oh yeah. I think in some ways, yeah. And
for sure.
And you with like a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko, most of them, the vast majority of them, once they hit like somewhere in that 3 to 5 year old range, their color starts to kind of drop off a little bit, right? Because they're just getting older. It's normal. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. They're just getting a little older. The color dulls out. Uromastyx are the total opposite. They have ontogenic color development. And so as they get older, their color does nothing but increase. It just fills in more and more and more and more. And so, you get a 20-year-old Yemenensis, and that animal looks fucking badass, like spectacular, The females too. That's the thing. The females may not maintain male level color when they're young, but over long enough time spans, the females look extremely colorful also, So you're kind of getting a little bit of the best of both worlds there. So I don't know. I just think that they're like an obvious choice for anybody who wants a low maintenance, long-term reptile pet,
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a snake,
No. Yeah, that's
something that's a little bit that's as low maintenance as you can get with a lizard, really.
And you can interact with it, you can hand feed it, you can let it out, you can play with it. I mean, they're smart animals. They learn to recognize you very quickly. They have so many quirks. I got so many of them here, and even the babies every year. Each little baby develops their own little quirk and their own little funny personality. I've got got some here that are nest guarding right now, and they're the nicest animals in the off season. But right now they think there are eggs in their nest boxes, so they come tearing at me at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I got some that only see my hand as food. So I go to put food in the bowl and they're trying to bite my fingers. But then I have some that are like Kimberly rock monitors, but they just crawl up my arm looking for food, and they're just as friendly as can be. You know, it's really it's a mix. They're cool animals.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, like I've always thought they're cool looking. You know, they always look like prehistoric to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never actually got my hands on one and decided I want to keep it.
Yeah, they're hard. You know, they're not easy. Yeah. They're not necessarily forgiving, right? So if there's big care issues, they can go down quickly if you're not staying on top of it, right? And then you have the problem of I mean, they'll last for a while, but then you have the problem of people get kind of discouraged for two reasons. One, you know, if you betray their trust, you spend all this time getting them to be cool, and they come over and they'll eat from your hand. Then you do one thing to piss them off. You might lose a year of work. You know, they might go back 10 steps and say, all right, I'm not coming out anymore, fucko. You know?
Yeah.
With my Asian water monitor when he was younger.
Right.
I let him out and he got pinned up behind my Tegu cage.
Yeah.
In the corner of the wall. And I actually had to put hands on him, you know?
Yep.
To get him out. It took 6 months, man.
Yep.
For him to be okay with me again. It was tail whipping me and all that.
Yeah.
Just because I put hands on him one time.
Yep. It's very, very difficult. And then you also have the problem of breeding. So, you know, most of us, or not, maybe not most of us, but quite a few of us that get involved in reptiles, we want to try our hand at breeding something. It's fun, right?
My chair just went down.
That's awesome.
I'm just sinking very slowly. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm distracted.
No, it's all right. No problem. The breeding is a problem too, because they only breed once a year, you know? So if you try to breed them and something fails, you have to wait a full calendar year before they're going to breed again. And that's just the way it is. And it's kind of a drag. People don't like that sometimes.
People don't have the patience for it, man. Like I didn't for a long time. You know,
Me too.
I've been in it for probably as long as you have, but just doing different things, never really finding my niche until the last few years with the Gecko stuff. And I feel like that's really when I found out that I can be patient. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to rush things, because some of these geckos, you really should grow them for at least 2.5, maybe 3 years before you think about breeding them. You know, you really should. Most people say it's about weight, but it's also about age and maturity. So yeah. Like I have them sitting on these Chihuahuas. I'm looking right at them. They're right here next to me. I have a pair of Pine Island Chihuahuas, and next year is the year finally. Well, I could try to pair them if they don't kill each other.
Right. Well, and a lot of people will kind of skirt that because they'll say, well, you know, they'll get a bearded dragon, and because of the reality is a bearded dragon, you feed them enough, they could breed at 6 months, man. You know what I mean? You shouldn't, right?
No.
But people, it can happen, and but with a Euro, even if they grow like lightning, you got 3 years. You have 3 years. They're just not going to be large enough. And even if they get to a size where they could presumably mate, produce, and lay eggs, a lot of them when they're bred young and they lay early, they might lay eggs, but a lot of times that first clutch doesn't happen. So either A, the first clutch fails because this didn't work, or B, a lot of the females will reabsorb. So I've had a lot of females that, you know, I'll raise them up for 3 years, put them in with a male, they'll mate, and I'll be like, all right, eggs in 5 weeks, and then 5 weeks and 6 weeks and 8 weeks and 9 weeks. And then all of a sudden the animal doesn't look as gravid anymore. And it clearly couldn't handle it. Right. So that animal decided that, well, not decided, but its body decided like, we're not ready. And so it stops. But you know, so you can try. And even then Euros, you're still going to have to wait. It's just the way they are. It would be like trying to rush a tortoise. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. I don't see that. Go ahead.
I have to say, I just curious, man. you've worked with a ton of different, basically every species that is accessible to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh man, I feel like I change this all the time. It's kind of a depends a little bit. I think probably ornate or Yemenensis tends to, but all of them, like when Thomasai are hatching, I'm like, oh my God, these little jewels of the desert, man. They look like some kind of crazy jewel you pull out of a jewelry box of some sultan in Oman. They're
They
stunning.
are really crazy. Yeah.
Really wild looking, right?
Yeah.
But princeps too. Princeps are they're kind of like a bland. I mean, they're colorful, but it's like grays. It's like gray hues, gray greens, and gray blues and stuff. Really beautiful, colorful animals, but they're just not as loud as some of these others. But princeps are badass in their own right. They're a little smart. They're kind of like bird-like and alert, and they've got those big explosions on their tails rather than the rings of spikes. But I feel like it's just so hard to beat a good ornate or a good Yemenensis. They're just so freaking beautiful. But and then I've got my big Egyptian male pork chop. I mean, that guy just holds a special place in my heart. I don't think I could say he's not my favorite. I mean, he is in some way. So maybe it depends on the level. Maybe like favorite species, favorite individual, favorite whatever. You know what I mean? It's
there's different answers. Yeah.
Because when it's time for me, like I can never truly. I don't know. My Asian water monitor, he's pretty special to me. But
yeah,
you kind of develop like a special connection with every single one of them.
You do.
Like
yeah,
you almost feel wrong.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Being a favorite child,
Yep, I do. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
it's tough. So, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about like the type of enclosures and stuff that you do in your facility there. So you do have a separate facility from where you live.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your own place. So what type of caging are you doing there? I've seen pictures. It's pretty unique. But it looks awesome too at the same time.
Well, thanks. I think you might not think it looks as awesome if you saw it in person because it's these. It's kind of janky, man. But it works.
I'm telling you, sometimes janky stuff just works, man, and it does. You just go with what works because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to make things work.
Yeah,
you're not. I mean, you want them to look as nice as they can, but you want them to work too.
Yeah. So
honestly, the pictures I've seen, I think it looks nice. I'd kill for a facility like that. I'd be like, oh, look at all these things. These are awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So the caging, I think the primary one you're talking about is the kiddie pools, right? So I have these. They're just the regular old 6 foot wide blue kiddie pools that you buy at Kmart, Home Depot, Walmart, whatever. And you just take 2 of them. You cut a hole out of the bottom of one, flip it over, and then rivet. Screw the 2 pools together at the rim, so it just doubles the height of the pool. So it ends up working like an aquaculture pond or a just like a big tub. They're a little flimsy, but they have actually are pretty strong as long as you don't put weight on them from the outside. So if you can't like lean on them, right, because they'll just collapse inward. But they hold shape pretty well. The lizards can't put any pressure on them from the inside. They're slippery, so they can't get out. They work pretty well, and it allows me to have a lot of space. So each Euro has a 6 foot diameter pen. A couple of the smaller, like I have some of the 4 foot ones for the 4 foot pools for the for some youngsters and for some of the smaller species like the Thomasai and Princeps. They'll sometimes get like a 4 foot diameter pool, but it's still like it's a lot bigger than a 4x2. You know what I mean?
It's bigger than any terrarium available on the market, readily at a pet store for sure.
For sure. And some stuff like some of the species like the Moroccans, I can't, or the big ornates or the adult, whatever. I can't imagine keeping them in anything smaller because man, those are big. Some of those are pretty big lizards. Like the Moroccans can get pretty hefty, 18 to 20 inches. They can get pretty big when you try. And I can't imagine keeping them in anything smaller than that. It would just seem cruel. And then my Egyptians, they're in these big open top. And some of the other stuff, it's scattered in among the pools. I have the boxes made out of just white melamine boxes with lights hung over the top. The Egyptians are in 8.5 foot by 5 foot pens. And they do really well in those. And even those seem small, honestly. Like if I took the divider, like it's 2 pens, 8.5 by 5 right next to each other. And one has the female, one has the male. And if they tolerated each other, I would take that divider right out of the middle and just let them get that whole 17 feet plus 5 feet wide. I mean, they would just be one big long pen. I'd love to be able to give them that.
But they won't tolerate each other all the time. Just coming together for breeding.
No, the male would kill her. He's fucking ruthless.
He's a beast.
He's a monster. And they beat the crap out of each other when they fight, man. It's
oh man,
they're like tanks. They can just rip each other apart, and they'll heal from it. They don't care. They're like whatever. They're like they make me think of like when I think of like the Mongol hordes. You know what I mean? Like what some of those weird, crazy, hard bastards must have been like back in the day. Those crazy giant Mongolian warriors are probably scary as hell. Scarred up and just looking beastly. But yeah, so it's good caging. It works for me. The open,
like back, like Vikings and gladiators back in the day.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Right. The caging works pretty well. For me, the key is that it's open top. That's the thing. It's because it does a few things. I think ventilation is for Uromastyx is pretty high priority. I think that the fully enclosed cages, while they have their perks, right? So the front opening fully enclosed cages seem to lend themselves a little bit to having animals that are just a little more tame, because if you think about an open top cage, you come in at the lizard from over the top and they freak out because that's what a predator does, So it takes them a little bit longer to learn that you're not going to give them a hard time, right? But in those fully enclosed cages, you have a lot more difficulty maintaining proper temperature gradients because it's very hard to get the cool side to stay cool. The cool side will inevitably.
There's nowhere for the air to go.
Yeah, there's nowhere for the air to go. Then it's hard to get good airflow. And so when you combine that airflow with, if there's any mold in the cage, it usually should be too dry, right? But if you live in a humid place, or if you add a little bit of humidity to the cage for the well-being of the animal, then you risk getting a little bit of mold buildup. The other thing that happens is most people use loose bedding for their Euro, whether it's sand soil mixture or play sand or whatever. They use that as the base bedding, which is fine. But if it's not well ventilated, then they're just inhaling all that particulate matter all the time, And so I actually over the years have switched to mostly gravel, like a pea gravel or driveway gravel, and it's real thick, chunky rock. So it's kind of hard to clean, but it's dustless for them. It's got a little bit of dust, but it's got mostly dustless, and that's good for me. It's good for the animals. There's good air ventilation, and then personally, I like it because the whole temperature, like the ambient temperature of the room, goes up and down with the seasons. So in a stacked enclosure, you're going to get, if you got 3 or 4 enclosures stacked on top of one another, you're going to get staggered breeding because the seasonal changes might be different based on those because the top cages are going to be hotter, just the lower cages are going to be colder. You're going to get some level of staggered breeding, which isn't a problem at all. But I just like it just feels better to see everything kind of go up and down at the same time. It can be hard to have it really condensed because, if you got 70 Uromastyx breeding and they all lay eggs and breed at the same time, you need a shit ton of nest boxes. You need a giant incubator and you need a lot of baby cages. So for me, I'm kind of lucky because my shop, one end has a garage door. The other end has a small room for where I keep the babies and stuff. And so it's warmer as you get towards the small room and cooler as you get towards the wall or the garage door. So I get a little bit of staggering front to back in the breeding, which is nice because then I'm not inundated with so much all at the same time. And I'm the only guy. I get help every once in a while. My mom or my fiance.
All right.
Yeah, they'll help me out. It's just me. So I got to do it all. Yeah. And that's hard. So, it's nice to get a little bit of a break in between. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, so when it comes to breeding Euros, are you doing any sort of like a temperature drop seasonally for to induce breeding behaviors, or is it something else?
No. So it's a combo of things. So yeah, the ambient temperatures change. So I would say the two factors that seem to be most effective for getting them to breed is cooler ambient daytime temperatures in the winter. So, and then you're going to have a shorter photo period too, right? So you might go from, sometimes in the winter, I'll bring them down to 6 to 8 hours of daylight, right? And then, a lot more nighttime. But the ambient or the basking temperature, the max basking temperature still stays pretty much the same during the winter. I still want them to be able to access 125 degree basking zone because they might need to digest food. Some of them cool a little harder than others. A lot of them disappear for 6 months. They just take off in October and I see them again in February. You know what I mean? It's like, it's fine. But so there's the reduced photo period. There's the cooler ambient winter daytime temperatures. And then there's the cooler nighttime winter temperatures. And I think those three sort of factors are part of it. The other thing is it's seasonal food disparities and availability. So as things move towards the winter, I actually pull out, they just don't really get much dry at all. Like they dry food anyway. They get less food overall, less variety of food, and less high quality food in the wintertime. So in the wintertime, they might, if they're eating at all, the only thing they're going to get is romaine lettuce, and it's going to be infrequent. It's going to be like, 2 or 3 times a week at most. I mean, and that's assuming they even want to eat. A lot of mine won't eat at all during the wintertime.
Right.
And so I keep it. Yeah.
I go into a brumation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Most of them do. Some of them stay out and they just don't want to go down. So, it's pretty rare. So, you got, I'd say like 75% of my Euros disappear for months. And then the remaining 25% is a mixture between animals that slow down in the winter. And then there's just a small handful that don't seem to give a shit. They're just out.
Yeah.
Whenever.
They're just like, I still want to eat all day. I want to bask all day.
Now, there's a difference in that, depending on the age, maybe younger ones that are trying to grow faster. Maybe they're the ones staying up, or
great question, but no. Actually, I'll get first season babies. I'll get some that hatch as late as August or September, and they'll be up for 2 months, and then they'll crash. They'll totally brumate hard in that first season. Wow. Really, they don't screw around. They just it's part of what they got to do. They seem to know. Yeah. Some of them stay out, occasionally, but I kind of let them tell me what they want to do. If the temperature goes down and they want to go hide, it's like, all right, you do you, man. I'll be here for you if you need me. But if they want to stay out, okay, you can stay out. I'll feed you. Yeah. It's cool. But
I'll be here.
See, with my tegus, man, I tell you what, man, they stress me out when it comes to brumating season. When it's winter, they stress me out because it's like one day they're awake and then one day they're asleep.
Yep.
and you go to sleep with a full stomach.
Yep.
So it's just terrifying.
And I know what you mean. And it's even weirder too with it can be weird also with the Euros because you get some that for example, you get little babies, right? So I had a Flava fasciata once abandoned. I've had this happen with a lot of them, but just as an example, this Flavi, she went into brumation, yay big, and took off in September. I didn't see her October, November, December, January, February, March, and she comes out in March, and she's bigger.
What?
Yeah, she grew in brumation. Now, some of them don't do that, right? Some of them will go in, and they come out, and they've lost a little weight. Now they
didn't eat the whole time.
Didn't eat, didn't bask, didn't shit, didn't do anything.
But grew.
but she grew
somehow.
Yeah. She like doubled in size. Honestly, she got huge. It was crazy.
That sounds like the most nerve-wracking thing ever.
And it seems like, and it is. It's one of those things that people have to get used to. And I'm used to it now because I've seen it so many times, and I see it as a break. I'm like, all right, thank you. I'm going to go hit the gym like twice a day today because you're not, I don't need you. You don't need me. You know, you're doing fine. But like some of them will like, and mostly that happens with youngsters where they'll go in and they'll come out looking a little bigger. Right. But the adults, they won't do that. A lot of the adults either lose no weight at all. They just lose belly weight, right? But their legs nice and meaty and muscular, beefy, but they just don't have any belly weight, right? Some of them will lose both. They'll lose belly weight. They'll lose leg weight. What you don't want to see them is losing tail weight. That's where things get weirder. The tail weight's a bigger problem with Euros. It's okay if they lose a little bit of leg weight. That's normal. It happens. You get young ones that get thicker, thinner legs based on how much they're eating. Gravid females, one of the places they lose weight is in the legs and stuff. It's totally normal. But
and
yeah,
to just interject real quick, when it comes to tail weight, what I've noticed with some of the ones that have been skinny that I've seen over the years, you know, working in pet store and stuff, can you really only tell from the bottom? Because that's what I've noticed. Like they seem to sort of suck up in the bottom part of the tail. That's where it becomes really visible, as opposed to the top part, which is usually just covered in spikes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yes, that I would say that's mostly true. You do see it in the hips. So you'll see that tail weight lose in the hips a little bit. And if they're losing fat from the top, like on their back, where you start to see the rivets in the spine, that's like real bad. But then the other thing you'll see is the tail scales can sometimes like dent in a little bit when they're not well cared for, and then they kind of swell out and puff back out when they're getting more water and more food. But you still don't want to see that much of that either. You really like.
Well, I was just curious as like to what, you know, if you're just looking at your Euro without picking it up type of a thing, like what are the things that you would look for? I just, you know, being that we had like 5 or 10 Euros in a vision cage in a store, and some of them were thinner than others. You were picking them up every day and looking at them, you know? And I would notice that some of them were really skinny on the bottom of their tails. It would almost like sunken in.
When that's happening. That's usually things are pretty bad when it's that thin.
Yeah, because usually when they first came in, we tried not to keep that going on. But some of them they were just always like that. They seemed to just perpetually be like that. Like
and it's hard for them.
Somehow they just lasted.
Yeah. Well, they can operate on a pretty low caloric budget, you know. But it's some of it's just they can't stand being in big groups like that. They hate it. That's like torture for them. So it's like, in some ways, you know how people say cats are kind of like a little autistic? You know what I mean? Like cats are kind of have like a little bit of they exhibit some of the same kind of behavior as some people who tend to be on the spectrum do, which is obviously totally I'm not insulting anybody. It's just a reality.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
With Euros, it's some of the same ways, right? Like they're not necessarily great in social situations all the time. They can be very, 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 very sensitive to very small changes in the environment. You know, you'd be amazed that, you know, cages that look totally fine, you'd imagine that's perfect for a Euro. You put it in there, the Euro hates it for months. Just never seems to be on point. Then you change just a few things, and that animal's like, sick, I'm good now. You know, I'm like, I'm happy, ready to roll. It's just like, what the hell, dude? You know, what was it? What was the difference? It was just weird little quirks.
You'll never know.
No, you won't. They won't ever tell you. I'll tell you that much.
Nope. That's crazy. So I want to know because you've got me fascinated with these damn things. What got you into the Xenogama, man? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing or it existed up until literally like 2 weeks ago. Stumbled across the Lizard Brain Radio. I listened to that episode after having it downloaded for a little while, and I was like, what are these things?
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about. I wish you had a freaking picture of it, bro.
I'll bring up a picture if you want.
Bring up So
you gotta this crap.
So
I brought it up when we were on another podcast. I would have thought you'd remember, Gabe.
Unbelievable.
know, you lose me halfway through all these names, okay, bro?
Is there? Well, there is a common name. That's the shield-tailed Agama,
Yeah,
right?
shield-tailed Agama. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So,
I'm looking for one that like really does them justice.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because that cobalt blue throat is just nuts.
It comes and goes too, right? Like it can like come and go super fast. It's like
seconds.
a male coloration.
Yeah, it's just like with when you watch a bearded dragon and they get that jet black beard when they're trying to breed. It's the same thing, but with cobalt blue. It's crazy. It's really wild how quickly it comes up.
All right, it takes me a second. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, no. Take your time. It's all right.
There we go. Yeah. It's not the best, the biggest picture, but yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Perfect. I should be able to zoom in on it. Oh no, that didn't work. Never mind.
There's a good one. Let's look at this one right here. Down, bottom left, right there. One more, right here, right there. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. I think that's Matthias Kuper's photo, and I think that might have been Camille's animal. My friend.
Okay.
Camille. I might be wrong about that, but I think so. So these guys are the way I first found out about them was just back in the day in the early 2000s. I when I was into Uromastyx, Lindsay Pike used to bring him in all the time, and he'd keep them. Yeah, and he would have them on his site. They used to be grouped similar to Uromastyx, kind of in the same family for a little while because there's some
your
there you go. Yeah, that's
some of your
that's a good way. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That guy's a real champ, that dude. They're cool lizards. They're just really cool.
So damn cool, man.
Now that I seen the tail, I know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. Right. And
look at that thing.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're really, really interesting, fun lizards. And so
Lindsay, badass.
Yeah. And so Lindsay Pike was breeding them. And importing them, and he might have bred them. I'm sure. I don't know. I never asked him, but I had them a little bit when I was in college. I kept a few, but I never bred them. I just had them, and but they kind of have they bear a lot of similarities, a lot of resemblance to Uromastyx. They're sporadically imported. There weren't that many people keeping or breeding them, but there's a demand there. They're interesting, and people are intrigued by them. So. A couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago or so, a big group of them came in from Tanzania, I think, and they're native to Somalia and Ethiopia, and so people brought them across the border in big groups, and there was a whole mess of them. So I bought three pairs, and then I ended up getting a couple of females after that from another friend, and I had never bred them before. And so I decided, I'm like, all right, well, I bred Euros, so how hard can these little bastards be? And they were a little more challenging than I expected. I kept them for almost a full year before I felt like they were stable and established. It took me a while to kind of figure out their quirks to make them happy, which is funny because when I kept them back in college, they were kicking ass from the jump. I was doing something right then that I didn't do in this go around. But anyway, so I kept these pairs. I got them going, and then I started getting eggs. About a year later, I started getting eggs, but I had no idea the females were gravid because I never saw mating or breeding behavior, and they just didn't show in the same way. And so out of nowhere, I just come home and there's like a bunch of eggs sitting on the floor of the cage, and I'm like, well, shit. And then. So then I started to get a little bit better at noticing because the females, when they get gravid, they plump up a lot. Like it became more obvious, right? And so what I did is I started putting the females in a cage with this Exoterra stone desert crap that I would never ever use anymore because it's just so dusty.
It's like a burrowing clay type.
Yeah, you're meant to wet it down and then compact it. But the point, the point is, it's like supposed to hold humidity in a burrow, right? Well. These animals would dig their burrow out, and then the burrow would dry out and crust up. And so then, I lost 4 clutches in a row, them laying in the sand and then laying in this desert stuff, and it was too dry, and I just couldn't get it to work. So I reached out to a guy in Europe, a fellow named Larry Dams, who had bred them several times. And then also I think he does like horned lizards and all these other things. Really cool guy. And I was like, how do you get them to nest? And he's like, I just keep them on topsoil. I just keep them on topsoil so that when the females lay the eggs, they can dig a nice burrow down in the humidity and they lay there. And then you just pull the eggs out.
They stay viable long enough for me to find them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what I did is I started putting them in, I keep them in these individual tubs because I keep a lot of them, some of them solo, some of them in pairs. It doesn't matter. And I keep them in these tubs, and I would just fill one of these tubs up with about 8 inches of, because they're small lizards. They look like a,
they're like the size of like a Nephroris or something, right? Like they're pretty small.
They're like they're about the size of a Nephroris amii. In fact, an amii might be able to eat one. You know what I mean? They're
wow.
They're not quite as big, but they're the same kind of structure, like a bulldog. And so I put them in a thing of about 8 inches of topsoil, and the females started laying their eggs, and I started being able to collect them no problem, and I started getting out. And then I did another year of I let them go through the summer where they didn't breed, and they just recouped, got all their nutrients back. And then I cooled them down for 6 or 8 weeks or so, and then I brought them out, and they bred like wildfire. And they'll lay multiple clutches in a season, and they're really easy for the most part to maintain because they're so small. They're like a diurnal Nephroris, and they're little, and they're fun, and they're interactive. And so then once I started keeping them apart a little more often, I was able to introduce females to males and see the breeding behavior, which is I've uploaded some videos on my Instagram. It's hilarious. The males will wriggle their little tail tip, and then they'll raise their tail butt up, and they'll wag their whole tail, and then they'll run after the females, grab them, their chin's blue, and then they mate with them. And they're like collared lizards from the United States, because they used to breed collared lizards too. And
wow. Okay.
They mate really fast. So like Uromastyx mate, and they might stay locked up for like 10 minutes, sometimes 5, sometimes less, but they can stay locked up for a long time. But these Xenogama mate, it's like an instant, like they mate and then they're done. Yeah, they're so fast. It's literally seconds, which is why I never saw it before. So then they're much easier now, but they are killer. I think that they are an excellent choice because they're like a bearded dragon in the care, in the base level of care. Like it's you don't need. I mean, it's a smaller lizard, and they don't eat as much, and there's a lot.
Are they omnivorous, or are they strictly insectivorous?
Yeah, no. They'll eat both bugs and primarily insects, but they will eat greens. You can chop up. It's small amounts, and they'll eat flowers too. Like I give them dandelions during the spring and summer. They eat those as well. But it's like a 70-30. You know what I mean? Like you can force them to eat a little bit more greenery, like as they get older. And I would imagine that greens should become a bigger part of their diet. But they take both foods pretty easily. But the thing is, they don't eat that much food. So like, as an example, when my animals aren't breeding, they'll get 1 dubia cockroach every other day. Wow. Now it's a chunky dubia, it might be.
It's a big dubia,
It's like a decent, not an adult dubia. We're talking like a half-grown dubia, so like a medium-sized dubia. They get 1 or 2 every other day, and you could do a little less. You could do super worms. You could do horn. Females that after they lay eggs, they'll eat hornworms. I'm sure they'd eat silkworms. They'll eat all that stuff. Waxworms. Exactly. Yeah, they love it. So they'll eat all that stuff. Black soldier fly larvae. Cricket. I don't feed any crickets myself, but they will eat crickets if you want.
Man, I want to get out of crickets so bad.
I know.
I literally every night that I'm feeding and I'm giving crickets, mainly to my smaller my juvenile crested geckos. They love them. I try to I have a small enough number that I try to regulate how many they're getting, and I try to watch them eat because I just want to see that they're eating.
Yeah.
But the crickets piss me off so freaking bad, man. Like I'm in there, I'm in the other room, I'm pulling my enclosures down, I'm working on them, and my wife's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I'm just pissed off at these fucking crickets. They're everywhere. Can't keep them contained."
Yeah. Well,
if it wasn't for these crickets, I would enjoy this. Well,
and they also, I know what you mean, man. And the crickets also, they die. They're hard to. You know, you go to the
I've
store
been
and you
having
buy.
decent luck with where I'm getting them lately, where I don't have a
Yeah.
lot of them dying, so
Mhm.
that's good. But I still have to supplement and like go to the pet store and get some large ones for my bigger stuff that eat. Like,
Yeah.
and those die. Those die fast. Like they don't last at all. If I don't feed them off
Yeah.
quick, they're gone. Yeah.
Right.
You screwed up total, bro. The next
There's
5
the bird.
bats.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, I try to feed them a varied diet, but they just do very well on dubia and super worms, and then the greens, of course. And then you know, but it's just not that much. The amount's very small, and they're small, so it's easy to give them a big. It's very easy to provide them with a very good enclosure. They can live a pretty long time, you know, even though they're small, and if I'm sure breeding probably shortens their life to some degree. But when you keep them just as a pet, I've seen them live for 15 years. You know, I had a friend who had a pair that he bought from me when I was in college, and he kept them for like a decade after that. And they were adults when I got them, you know, so they can live for a little while. And then I think they can probably be refined phenotypically, at least on some level, right? Like I'd imagine that they have a little bit of color to them, as you know, they're mostly drab. The wild type is a little bit drab, but you can see that there's color in different localities. There's color in different individuals. And so you can probably select for that. And then I'd imagine, you know, you get a mutation or two in there and it starts to get really fun. But I think that they are kind of like a perfect candidate for one of those next big thing kind of reptiles, because, you know,
I would have to agree.
They
caught me fast. Like
yeah,
I'm
they're
just like
so
thinking
cool
about it now. Yeah.
And the trends, you know, you think about some of these trendy reptiles, whether it's a leopard or crested geckos, which are smaller, and that's good. Whether you got a bearded dragon or a blue-tongued skink, which are bigger, you know, they're not small, but they're not giants, but they're still pretty substantial. And when you think about a bearded dragon or a blue-tongued skink, all I can think about is the food bill. You know, like they just eat so damn much food.
Yeah.
And these ones are not like that, but they are active and interesting, and they can be kept communally. They have interesting social lives. They can be kept in bioactive. You can keep them in something more sterile if you want to do, you know, if you're like one of those types who likes ultra clean setups, you know, paper towel and all that shit. If you're one of those, you can do that too, and they do fine in that. Yeah. I think that they have a very bright future. And so I've got my first, you know, the 3 pairs that I got. And this year I'll be holding back 6 pairs to grow that out. And then eventually I'd like to have somewhere in the order of 20 or 30 pairs at some point, because, you know, I just think that they are the thing they're better animal for the pet trade in terms of humane stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they seem cool. So I know that you get burrowing when you're breeding. Were you going to say something, Gabe? I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah,
go right ahead.
So I'm just saying they're sexually dimorphic. Like only the males have the blue.
Mostly. So it's actually the males have these big pores on the underside, and the females don't have them. And the males have these little orange stripes right here that it's like an inguinal patch that the females don't have. But the males are the only ones that get that real rich cobalt blue, but females will get bluing on the face and stuff. They will get it when they're nice and hot.
Attractive color.
Yeah.
Because they're cool little lizards, man.
They are super cool, man, and they're really fun to keep. Cute little guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about them until I can get them. That's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna keep thinking about them.
You gotta get them.
But my I'm going to eventually. I'll be getting with you.
All right, sounds good.
when the space opens up, I'll be getting with you. I know they don't need a lot of space, but I don't have any left. So
yeah,
at all. So
all good.
I can't even expand the projects that I'm like concentrating on. This would just be fun. This would just be something to do, you know, that I would really enjoy. But anyway, the burrowing question. So your females are going to burrow for nesting. Are they burrowers all the time though? That's the question.
Yeah, they are. So one way to think about them would be like meerkats, you know, prairie dogs actually might be the better. Yeah. So they will, if you give them a cage, like you could take, say like a 40-gallon breeder, right? And you could set that up with 1.3 or 1.2, put like, you know, a slight slope of topsoil that goes from like 3 inches on one side up until 8 inches on the other side. And then scatter in there some cork and some stone. If you want, you don't even need stone if you don't want to. And you keep it moist, keep the bedding moist underneath, and they'll make intricate burrows, and they'll share them with other animals. They'll come in and out of there like prairie dogs and do their dances and eat and everything. They're really, really fucking cool. If you keep them, you can keep them in different ways. So they don't require the burrowing because they share habitat with Uromastyx princeps in Somalia. And the habitat for Uromastyx princeps. So when you look up, I'm working on a care guide for Xenogama taylori, and I have some great photos from Thomas. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's Mazunch. Mazunch. I don't know how to. Sorry, okay. Thomas, if I can't pronounce your name, guy.
It's all good.
But he has wild photos, and they have habitat that ranges everything from like a grassy plain, where it's just dirt and grass, and they come out and they'll eat the grass and they'll eat the bugs and they'll go back in their burrow, all the way to like rocky scree fields and where there might be a little bit more boulder obligate style, like a collared lizard or a horned lizard.
Okay.
So they range in that whole spectrum of habitat. And so you can keep them with burrows, but you can also keep them with rock piles, and they'll use the rock piles just as well. Right. I keep my single adults in 55-gallon Rubbermaid tubs, and the 55-gallon Rubbermaid tubs, those of us who have those know that the bottom of the tub has these channels that they're meant to help them stack, right? Those channels are about, like 2 inches across and about 1.5 inches deep. Well, when you lay stone over the top of that with a little bit of sand on the bottom, it's a perfect burrow. It's just perfect.
You can the rock can't fall on them, and it'll leave a nice channel for them to go in.
Yeah, that's right. And you can also use roofing tiles, like Spanish roofing tiles and stuff, and I'll break them apart with hammers, and then just make, or like a reed stack or whatever. You can use any of these things where there's thin crevices. They love that too, and they'll use that just as quickly as a burrow. However, when they get that option, I have a tendency to spray water on the inside of the if there's a rock sitting over those channels in the Rubbermaid tub, in the morning and in the evening, I'll spray a little bit of water every few days into the channels, so that way they get a little bit of local humidity and stuff. And it actually they appreciate a little bit of water as opposed to, even though they share habitat with Uromastyx, they do like a little more relative humidity and a little bit more ready access to water. They drink a lot of water, and they're cool, man. They're actually really, really badass little lizards. Really cool.
Yeah. And it's probably a self-answering question, considering they overlap with a Uromastyx species. The same kind of hotspot we're talking about?
Actually,
really
no. So
okay.
Yeah. So even though they do inhabit those regions, they seem to like just slightly cooler temps. So mine don't bask in anything over 110. They just don't. If it's available, maybe they'll use it once in a while. But for the most part, all of mine avoid anything over 110. And in fact, the hatchlings, they won't bask in anything over 100, really. They like 100, 102 maximum. And they do really well at those slightly lower temps. But with the ambient temperature, it's the same. So the ambient temperature still should be like 85-ish degrees, 80, 85 degrees or so. But, the basking temp, no hotter than 110. And because of that, if you go a little hotter, they might use it a little, but they avoid it. They'll dehydrate too quick if you put them in that. So they're a little bit like, I would imagine it's like shift work in the wild, So the Xenogama would probably be out much earlier than the Uromastyx in the daytime. Yeah. And they catch maybe early morning dew on the grass and a little bit of fog if it rolls in off the coast, if you find them on the coast, or whatever, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I talked about this with Andrew Gilpin. We had him and his wife on the show from LAC. Yeah, and we talked on the phone for like over an hour before we set up the date to do the thing.
Nice.
And he was talking about when they went herping in the rainforests in various countries down in South America, that there was a whole regime, especially with like the insects, like certain species of insects. It was almost like clockwork.
Yeah.
One species would be out, and then when it was time for them to go, they went, and the other one came, and then it just kept going from there and building up. So yeah, it makes perfect sense that there would be a sort of a shift work thing. That's really cool.
It's probably like the American stuff. So, you know, if you go out into the Southwest, one of the first things you see out is the side-blotched lizard, right? Before you see any collared lizards or chuckwallas or leopard lizards or anything, you see the side-blotched lizards. And then the side-blotched lizards probably go and hide when it gets hot enough for the bigger stuff, because if they're caught out, they're going to get eaten by the bigger stuff. So I would imagine that it's probably something quite similar with the Xenogama, because they're probably get eaten by everything, you know?
Yeah, I have a big thing in a special place in my heart for collards, man. I've never ever kept them. Never kept them. I just had this experience with one at the first pet store that I worked at. It was a different one. It had a nice like separate reptile room, and when I first started there, we had some eastern collared lizards, and I was just like enthralled with these things. They were so damn cool. And then we sold them, and I don't think we never got them again while I worked there. And those were the last ones I ever saw in person. Like I never saw them again. And I don't see them at expos. I see them online occasionally. I'm in a group on Facebook just to, you know, just to lurk, you know, and see what people have. Well, but yeah, what made you get out of those? And because since I assume you're not in them anymore, right? Like you said, you used to keep them.
I mean, I still have a profound passion for collared lizards, but a very disgruntled competitor, he knows who he is. So this guy, we're not cool.
Gotcha.
He called Fish and Wildlife on me and a couple other guys here breeding collared lizards because he said that they weren't legal here. And now Chororophytus calaris, yeah, that's right, because they're native. They live in Colorado, but Vestigium, Bicentories, Nebrius, Dickersoni, they're all square because they're not native to the state. They're totally fine. They can't live here. It's not a big deal. But that's why you don't see that many, is because there's a lot of state collared lizards exist all across the country. So when you're dealing with Native American wildlife, things get really hairy, legally speaking. So you have to be really careful, which is weird because none of these regulations seem to give a damn about cow kings or corn snakes or any of these other damn native animals.
Well, I mean, I have the exact opposite, and I live in West Virginia, and we recently, within the last couple of years, passed a new herp law. So everything here that's native is illegal to have and sell and things like that. Minus a couple of frogs and a couple of turtles. You know, you can legally collect them if you. I don't know. I have no idea. You can legally collect them if you have a fishing license, which is odd. But like and so I mean, I do these local shows, these reptile expos, and the guys got me checking for native species because I'm familiar with all the species here. Right. So we're always having to tell people who come from like Kentucky or Ohio to vend our show that they can't have their corn snakes. We have to make them put them under the table. You know, you can't sell them. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks because I like living here and I'm gonna live here for a while. But I used to breed corn snakes and I loved it and I want to do it again, but I can't. Like, I don't see the point. Like, I can't get them. And if I was to get my hands on one, then I would just have to like keep it a secret and keep it, you know, as my pet. And I couldn't really do projects with it. You know what I mean? I do. Have it, but
right. Do you have like PetSmart and Petco out there?
We do, but they don't sell them.
Really?
Yeah, no, I've never seen one there. Okay. Yep. They seem to be following the law. The ones in the state, there's a nice pet store right over. I'm right in the tri-state area, West Virginia. It's like Ohio. I can see it from, if I went out the back, I can see the hills of Ohio, and I'm like 15 minutes from Kentucky. So there's a nice one over in Kentucky. They have corns occasionally, but it's legal there. Yeah, you know, and if I was to buy one, I don't know what they would. They probably would ask me, I would guess, if I live in West Virginia. Yeah, you know? Because they're so close. I wouldn't buy one. I mean, I just won't. It's not worth it, you know.
Yeah. No, I have the opinion that we would be better off doing what Australia does. So in Australia, they want you to work with native wildlife because
absolutely
it's safe. They have so many invasive animals, and then people pretend like the United States is not the same thing, but it's fucking the same thing. We have so many, whether it's invasive
people
rose,
from other countries, whether it be like the UK or even Australia, they're jealous of our stuff, man. They want our stuff. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's just like we're jealous of their stuff. They're jealous of our stuff. So our stuff is desirable, you know?
Right.
I mean, and it's very cool.
You know how it is. You want what you can't have.
Right. Well, exactly. So then what you do is when you say you can't keep these things, you open up a black market for them. And I'm much more in favor of the sort of conservation through commercialization angle, especially in the United States, because, we've got, just look at chuckwallas, for example. There's like 5 or 6 different color varieties of chuckwalla in the United States. You've got granites, which are the white and black. You've got redbacks. You've got white and yellow tail, like the white and cream tail chucks. You've got carrot tail chucks, and you have banded chuckwallas. And then you've got some other scattered forms here and there where you get like speckled ones and just some various, regular earth tone chucks. But, you've got all these different spots, and, but they're all the same species. They're all Sauromalus ater, right?
Are they considered locales?
They're just considered locales, which is kind of unfortunate because, you could lose one, right? Like South Mountain carrot tail chucks only exist on South Mountain. Now they're protected there, but if anything were to change or something were to happen to South Mountain, that's the only carrot tail chucks we have. If you encourage people to work with these native animals, or at least allow them to, then you can allow people to get a captive bred source and they won't go out and take from the wild, And
not to mention, you have the potential for assurance colonies if stuff does go south, in habitat.
That's right.
If it can ever be restored later, you have something to pull from,
That's right. Yeah. And so,
what do you think they're doing with indigos right now in North Florida and like South Georgia and places like that? The Orion Society has been releasing indigos in those places where they haven't been found naturally in years the last several years, and they're having success.
That's right. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Definitely are.
Yeah. And so, I think I would love to see more ability to work with native stuff. And you can in some ways, right? Like chuckwallas, you can have them and you can keep them and you can breed them, but you just got to be careful about where you sell them to. You can't sell them to a native state. And you got to be safe. And I would love to see that. I would love to have the ability to really, because Crotophytus vestigium, the Baja collared lizard, that's the goat, man. That's the king of Crotophytus as far as I'm concerned. Maybe reticulate collards down on the border of Mexico. Those are nice too. I like those a lot. And then of course, who doesn't love a beautiful Eastern collard, bright blue and aqua with yellow head, and really, really cool. So, and there's a whole mess of other American reptiles: chuckwallas, collared lizards, leopard lizards, zebra-tailed lizards, horned lizards, night lizards, Gila monsters. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many cool reptiles here. And we have just as many problems.
Transpecos rat snakes. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, like
Dude,
these
things.
You got these damn cats that nobody regulates. Your fucking house cat that goes out and
they're doing more damage than most invasive reptiles are anywhere.
Way more damage. Way more damage. Yeah. So it's wild, man. It's a wild world.
It is. It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, we're approaching that 2-hour mark pretty fast, so we probably should be wrapping it up here.
Sure.
We won't keep you all night, man.
yeah, sure. Sounds good. No, I'm always happy to talk. It's all good.
Yeah, no, we greatly appreciate it. I've learned a lot tonight, and it was so nice to have somebody on that's, does something in such a cool niche, that you don't find a lot of that. Most of the time we're dealing with gecko people and everything else.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna stop talking because I think Gabe wants to say something.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, being that you basically got to keep a euro by itself. I might be able to convince my woman to let me have one.
There you go.
There you go. Check them out when hit them up when the time comes, because you probably won't find a better source. You definitely don't want to go buy one from a store or a show. I always like seeing them, but I'm always like.
I like the big stuff.
Yeah. Me too.
I know he's the man to talk to.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, big stuff is cool, but I don't know, man. Small stuff is cool too. I like small stuff.
You know me, bro. I've always, I mean, going from Burmese pythons, articulated pythons, now the big lizards and stuff like that. It's just what I like, man.
Yeah.
You can't get from a little gecko that sits in your hand, you know?
True. It's true. It's very true.
Well, but just real quick, we haven't had anything in the chat for a while, but we did just get a question. I assume this would be directed at you, Phillip. So since you're our guest, so any recommendations
for a beginner lizard? Oh man, Xenogama tailori. Honestly, I think any beginner reptile, like any reptile, it's more about you're going to be a beginner even if you've kept reptiles before and you get a new reptile. It's a new thing to learn.
Yep.
So I think it matters a little less about what you start with and more about how you start. So make sure you do your research, spend your time learning about the animal, give it the time of day. So if you get it and it's not what you expected right away, give it a year. Just give it a year, you know?
Write that down right there, because that's probably the best advice I've heard. It's not about what you start with, it's how you start.
How you start, yeah.
That's great freaking advice, man. And do your research.
Yep.
And have everything ready before you bring this damn animal home.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what I would say. I mean, you know, you're gonna get people who will say, "Well, bearded dragon, leopard gecko." Yeah, but that's, I mean, in my opinion, a bearded dragon's a complicated reptile. That's not.
I don't know about this. I mean, personally, just from my own experience, I'm not sure that that's the best place to start, Cool Gamer. But but like Phillip said, if you do your research, there's a really good group called Anolis Breeders and Enthusiasts on Facebook. It's a good group. There's not a lot of negativity there. I'm in it because I'm personally hoping to get into the bigger Anole species at some point. So I'm just lurking in there learning. Check that group out. And there's a lot of people that keep greens and browns, you know, just simple small anoles, and they have a lot of success. So you could do that. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I did it when I was younger. I got a couple from the store I worked at and they didn't do well. I ended up giving them back. But that's just, I don't know. Maybe it was just me. Yeah. I thought that they were easy because I grew up in Florida and I just, you know, was like, oh, they're everywhere. They can't be that hard.
More complicated than they seem.
I'm sure there's intricacies. Yes.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, I think that my you know, just do what you're going to enjoy.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what I've noticed is if you want, I don't know, let's say a Burmese python, okay? It's probably not a good example, but
yeah,
you want a Burmese python, and that's what you want, a freaking Burmese python, and you get a ball python, you're not going to take care of it and love it and enjoy that animal the same way that you would if you had what you originally want.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely got to follow. Yeah, you definitely got to follow what you're interested in. You know, people will say follow your passion. I would say follow your curiosity. It's probably a little better because you
do the legwork. That's
all. Yeah. You know, because you won't. You know, it's hard to be following your passion. Passion's fleeting. You know, passion comes and goes, and you can't engineer it. You can't cultivate it. You have to follow your curiosity and what interests you. That's got to be. It has to be what you pay attention to. And you know, passion.
You know,
passion's meaningless.
I can say I've had.
That's
you know, reptiles that I don't want to say a lot, but like an example, like my Mr. Nick right here. Let's go back to that.
Mr. Nick. He did it again. He pulled out the Mr. Nick. Now Wally's going to see this, and he's not going to stop calling me Mr. Nick for like the next month. He just stopped calling me Mr. Nick.
That's awesome.
I recently had a gecko that I absolutely. I mean, I loved him and stuff like that. You know, badass. Yeah. But Mr. Nick over here loved that gecko a lot more than I did. You know. And I'm like, this is a badass lizard, you know. I don't look at it like I should, and much attention as I should. So I'm like, well,
yeah.
Well, I pretty
He's-
much just jumped you because you sent me a picture of him, and I was like, "That's a fire lizard. I love that guy." And then he was like, "Well, I need you to help me figure out what I should get for my gargoyle geckos because I think I'm gonna phase out my gargoyle geckos and stick with the cresteds." And I was like, "All right, well, I have to have Hellboy, so you have to sell them to me. I don't know. We'll work it out." But I said it's my birthright.
That's funny.
He's a cool gecko. He's famous
Yeah.
in West Virginia now. Everybody loves him at the show. I can't stop. I mean, literally, people come from across the thing. At least people come to my table now, because they're like, "Wow, look at that one. Oh, I can't buy it. No, okay, well, see ya. Good. Everything else looks cool too."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, everybody wants to buy him, but they can't because he's mine. Anyway, yeah, I mean, just one last thing. I flashed this before, but cool gamer. Yeah, younger kid wanting to get into reptiles. Dad's making you work up to it. That's great. I mean, it's funny. I started the same way, and then I kind of stalled. My dad got me a book on leopard geckos because I guess he saw some at a pet store, and he was like, "I think you'd like these, son." And I read that book like 12 times over, but then I never got a leopard gecko, and then I never got a pet reptile until I was like 17. So. 16, 17. Yeah. So I had, what are you going to do? That's just the way it worked out.
I thought I was going to get a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff where I'm like, oh, I'll get that for sure. I'm going to get, monitors I've kept monitors, but I was looking at like, green tree and blue tree monitors. I'm interested in Agarnia. I'm interested in plated lizards. I'm interested in horned lizards. I'm interested in a lot of stuff, man. And it's hard. You have to narrow down what you want and try to phase out.
I get that because there's so many lizards that I love, but I've really come to realize that what I really like, I like bigger, semi-aquatic lizards, man.
Semi-aquatic. Wow. Okay. Nice. Yeah.
It's going to be the next big breeder of captive bred Chinese water dragons right there,
nice.
Which is another thing that needs to be captive bred.
It's true. It's very true.
It really does.
Yeah.
Watching that, something that one day I would love to have Cayman lizards, bro.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Badass.
They're pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful animals. That's for sure.
Badass. Semi-aquatic lizard is basically a tegu, man.
Yeah. It's an aquatic tegu. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. With square molars like a person. Very weird.
So weird. Teeth.
Yeah, it's so odd. I saw that for the first time recently. Like I kind of knew, but somebody like showed it on a video, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. It's like some buck.
That's crazy.
Some weird lizard with human teeth. Ugh.
Yeah.
Freaky.
Yep. Absolutely freaky. All right, man. So, I think we should go ahead and try to wrap it. I think we'll end with asking you if people want to find you. People want to maybe possibly think about getting lizards from you. Where can they find you?
So Arids Only on Instagram, Facebook, and I have a Patreon page now. Patreon.com/Arids Only. Where I do that's for. I just started that recently, and that's mainly to help me just narrow down people who are like really, really, really dedicated to Euros. People who subscribe there get early access to Euros I hatch. They also get like one-on-one care info and one-on-one time with me and merch and other cool shit because I want to help.
Awesome.
I really want to help educate people on how to. It doesn't even have to be about Euros. I just want to help people figure out how to do this better. And most people, as they get bigger, they tend to steer away from that. They tend to go towards less talking to people and more towards animals. And I prefer to do more. I want to help more. So I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment. So
no, that's great, man. I mean, that's a good way to use Patreon. It's one of the more unique ways I've heard. Most time people are trying to fund their content maybe, or maybe, just put together funds to do like if they do trips and stuff like that. I'm sure that's what a lot of it gets used for. But that's great. I think I did see a video of you recently talking about setting that up. So I thought it was pretty cool. Yep. Yeah. All right. So most of that stuff is already in the description of this video, guys.
Cool.
I will add the Patreon because I didn't know it existed until he reminded me. So I'll add that to the description. You can find all that down below. Definitely go check it out. I think you sometimes post availability to other places too. I think I might have seen some Xenogama on Fauna recently from you.
Yep. Yeah. So if I have extra stuff, like if people don't snatch it up before, on Patreon, if people don't message me on Instagram, anytime I have something available, I'll throw it on Fauna or throw it on Instagram. But the Uromastyx just don't last. I mean, they're
Right.
gone the second I have them. But the Xenogama, they go quick too, but sometimes not
They
as
just haven't
quick.
hit the mainstream as much
Oh,
as the
yeah.
Euros have. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and
they
it's-
will though.
And especially I was selling unsexed babies for a little while, but now I'm just going to sell sexed pairs. That's all I'm going to do.
That's
So
I think that's the best way to go.
And
yeah.
and
I mean,
I listed up 3.
because let's be honest, if you get into them, you're going to want to start producing them.
They're so
eventually,
cool.
So
Yeah, they're so
yeah.
cool, man. They're so cool.
Do you do
that'll
chucks
be the
too?
goal for me.
Do you produce chucks too?
I do. I have got 5 chuckwalla eggs incubating. I have no idea if they're going to hatch because I found them when they were pretty dry, but I put them in the incubator and they all puff back up.
Oh,
So they should hatch. Yeah. So I'll hatch some
Very
chucks
cool.
this year too. Yeah.
heck yeah, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, that's
Yeah.
thank you. Whoa, I'm about to knock
We're
over my
hanging out.
microphone.
Yeah.
I'll do the outro. I'll do the outro. If you want me to, or we can try to do it together. But it seems like tonight when I talk, no one can hear you. It cuts you
It's
off
true.
completely. So I have
Yeah.
to stay really silent. Yeah.
Well, I got this
So
set up. Okay, next week I'll be back.
no,
to-
you're doing great, man. Like it's cool. We just adapted and adapt and overcome. That's what we do. But anyway, yeah. Thank you so much, Phillip, for coming on.
Of course.
We appreciate it
Yeah.
so much, man. It was
Yeah,
really great
yeah.
to meet you. And
Likewise.
yeah, I mean, hopefully, at some point, maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe
Anytime.
Maybe we'll try to do like a more single species centered thing or something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
think of something. Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll try to work in because we're always looking for people. But yeah, that being said, I've been hanging out. Gabe's been hanging out.
Yeah.
Phillip's been hanging out. You're all hanging out. This has been Reptile Hangouts. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. We love to hear from you. Let us know what you want to see. And we'll be back next week with another amazing guest.
All right.
Night.